Hello YouTube, and welcome to the channel. I'm General Confusion, and this is Ultimate General Civil War. As you can probably tell, this is going to be a gaming channel, primarily. I plan to do Let's Plays of games that catch my eye, and the games that catch my eye will tend to be games like this. I'm very interested in strategy games, and I'm very interested in history. So historical games are likely to be present, if not be almost all of my output. So if you're interested in history and games, go ahead and sit back, relax, we'll see where we go with this. Do keep in mind, I plan to be talking quite a bit about the history of the game insofar as I know it, and also the history that the game covers, because history, especially military history, is really one of my passions. So get ready to hear me talk a little bit. So, Ultimate General Civil War. This is a project by Nick Tomatis, also known as Darth Vader. He was a Total War game modder, the Creative Assembly series of strategy games. He left that community a short while ago, and very briefly after he left that community, he was picked up by Game Labs, which is a Ukrainian-based indie game developer, and they put him to work making first Ultimate General Gettysburg, which is sort of a prequel to this game, and then this game. This is still in early access, so only about the first year and a half of the war is present. It only goes up to the Battle of Antietam in late 1862, so there's plenty of Civil War still to come. And hopefully they're going to do the whole thing. I believe the plan is that they're going to cover at least most of the major battles on the East Coast. And hopefully they'll do some of the western battles as well, because there were some very interesting fights over in this area. Vicksburg, for one. They do have the Battle of Shiloh in this game, which is great. So my plan is to play through a campaign, and in tandem with the playthroughs, I'll play through the battles and all of that, and I'll show you the campaign mechanics and the game mechanics, because I think this is a great game. I've played some of it before already. And I'll also talk about the battles themselves as they happened historically, and sort of place them in the context of the war up to that time. So here we go. Let's start a campaign. So when I click this button, there's going to be some loud talking, so I'll let that get through before I go back to explaining.
A house divided against itself cannot stand. This government cannot endure permanently. Half slave and half free.
I rise, Mr. President, for the purpose of announcing to the Senate that I have satisfactory evidence that the state of Mississippi, by a solemn ordinance of her people in convention assembled, has declared her separation from the United States.
It's interesting that they start out with Mississippi there, because at least as far as I recall, South Carolina was actually the first state to secede from the Union. At the very least, the first shots of the war were fired in South Carolina at Fort Sumter. So anyway, this is sort of the start of the campaign. You always dreamed to become a military officer like your father. You will note, this was made by a Ukrainian company. The English isn't perfect, at least now. Perhaps that'll get better as they get closer to release. It was your destiny to serve your nation in the battlefield and become a war hero. We'll see about the whole hero thing. So, at the very start, you get to decide where your character's initial points are allocated. There are several skills that affect how your army develops and what your limitations are. So army organization, for instance, having a higher army organization stat lets you have more troops in your army. It means you can have more units, and those units can be larger. Logistics gives you more ammunition. Training makes it easier to replace unit losses with veterans, which has an effect on the unit stats. I'll talk about that later when we get into that. And reconnaissance gives you more information about your enemy prior to battles, which can be really useful, but you don't necessarily need it. Unless it's more of an optional thing. So I'm going to start off with strategist, because personally I think having access to lots of veterans easily is more important than either of these other two categories. So now we got artillery, infantry, and cavalry. You were a cavalry officer and took part of Scott's invasion, so this is all reference to the Mexican-American War, which happened in the 1840s. This was a really important part of background to the Civil War because many of the officers that became really famous in the Civil War also served in the Mexican-American War, and actually many of them fought with each other. So they sort of knew each other before the Civil War kicked off, and it's possible that's what gave some of them, some insight into the other side. I particularly think of General Lee here, because General Lee won a number of battles against people that he had known before during the Mexican-American War, when he was serving with... I'm trying to remember what his exact position was, and I'm drawing a blank. General Grant served with artillery in the Mexican-American War. Lee, I believe, was a courier for Scott during at least part of the war. Anyway, so once again, I'm a big fan of training. However, I'm also a big fan of medicine here, because medicine gives you some of your dead back after every battle. And since you are going to lose men in every battle, that can be really important to help you grow your army steadily, which is really valuable the way this campaign works out. So I'm going to take artillery for logistics, a little bit of ammo, that's always best, that's always useful, and the medicine, which is really valuable. Okay, more of our life after the army. So this is after the Mexican-American War, during that sort of interbellum period. Apparently, our character here either stayed in the army, went to politics, or went into business. Economy now reduces the cost of buying new weapons. This is actually a big part of the game. You get a certain amount of money for winning different battles, money and new recruits. And using that money and those recruits wisely sort of determines, well, how well you're going to do. It determines how large and how effective your army is. So that's very important. Training is also very important, since that's the one that lets you get veterans more easily. And army organization can be helpful in that it can let you have a larger and more well-organized army right from the start. So I'm actually going to stick with army here. Now this is the big choice. Confederate or Union? I am going to play through this as the Confederates, and that's not because I particularly have any sympathy for the Confederate cause, but because, historically speaking, the Confederates were the underdogs. And I would find it more interesting, I think, to try to deal with those challenges. Because the Confederate states, the rebel states, I probably should say, had less industry, a smaller population. Basically, they had every disadvantage going into the war. The only real advantage they had was their leadership corps, because as it turned out, the Confederates seemed to have gotten more than their fair share of the highly skilled officers, especially veterans of the Mexican-American War, from the pre-war army. The Union, on the other hand, had all the manpower, all the guns, all the industry. And I just don't feel like playing with all those advantages would be as fun. Especially because in this game, you tend, as far as I've seen, since I have played some before, you tend to be outnumbered. And that, realism-wise, the Confederates were almost always outnumbered. So I'm going to go with the Confederate Army here. And this is just your difficulty level. I'm going to select the standard difficulty because I don't really care about the bonuses of penalties. Enter my name. What name shall I pick? Let's go with Adalbert Cromwell. Yeah, Adalbert Cromwell. Sure, why not? Okay, we've got 2 points in medicine. We've got 4 points in training, 2 points in army organization, and 2 points in logistics. This tells us what all those benefits are. So veterans cost 10% less for us. We have 10% extra ammo. We get 4% of our casualties back after every battle, and we can only have 1 corps to start off with. Those points in army organization will give us advantages in terms of the number of smaller units we can have, and we get no information about our enemies. I'm going to turn the advisor off. I'll explain things as they come along. Alright, so here we go. Okay, so this is throwing us straight into the intro battle. General, your first assignment is to secure a small coastal fort at this bank of the Potomac River. So this is a completely ahistorical battle as far as I know. I don't believe the Confederates ever actually controlled a fort on the bank of the Potomac. That would have been very close to Washington, D.C. So your vanguard must hurry up and eliminate the Union batteries while the fort is lightly guarded. The Federals have been alerted and gather forces to block the river passage in front of you. Additionally, enemy regiments have been spotted marching along this road. Okay, so we've got enemy reinforcements coming up this way. The fort's up there. They might get there before us, especially if we're delayed by anything in this area. Advance fast and gain ground before the fort is reinforced heavily, or else your task will be much harder. The rest of your troops will join you in about half an hour. Okay, so I'm going to pause here real quick. So, here's the main game screen. I have my units here, and I have buttons down here that I can click to select my units. You can see I have one corps, the first corps, and one division, the first division. If I click on the first division, it automatically highlights every unit that's in that division. And I can right-click to move them. If I click the first corps, same thing. It highlights every unit in the corps. Right now I have one corps and one division, so they both highlight everything. The movement system in this game is great. And this is one reason why I really like the game. If you click on select a unit, you can right-click to send it wherever. Or you can left-click right in front of the unit and drag and draw an arrow, and it will follow that path exactly, or as close to exactly as it can. Now, the arrow can only go so far. You can't do infinite loops and turns, but you can actually tell them to follow a specific road, which I believe makes them move faster. You can tell them to try to stay out of sight of the enemy by following a certain path, all that stuff. It's not just straight line waypoints or, jagged waypoints where you set a waypoint here and then a waypoint there and then a waypoint there and they follow it in jerky straight lines. This is really nice and I really like it. So, more details. We've got several different kinds of units. We have infantry. These are sort of our main line units. They're going to stand around and shoot. Click the information tab. This tells you what weapon they have. This becomes important later on. Very important, the different weapons you can use. And it tells you a bunch of stats. Command, efficiency, morale, stamina, firearms, and melee. I'll explain these all more later once we get into the camp screen. You can also see this unit, it has a star. You can have between 0 and 3 stars. That means it has a special skill. So it's taken an endurance course, this unit, Siegfried's Brigade. And so it has more stamina, more efficiency, and it's a little faster than other units. And same for Kemper here. Then we have skirmishers. Skirmishers are a lot like infantry. They move faster. There's fewer of them in a unit. And they have a slightly different array of weapons available to them. So, and they benefit more from cover, which means that they're harder to hit in most terrain. If you can see here, these guys are kind of standing half on a road, half in the woods. They have 61% cover. These guys who are standing entirely in the woods have 92% cover, Siegfried's brigade. But Kemper's brigade, which is sort of half in and half out, a lot like Hexamer's, they only have 45% cover. That's just because they have a lot more guys. We also have cavalry. Cavalry moves very quickly. What are they armed with? Okay, so they're armed with pistol and saber, so they're much better in melee than my infantry. You can see here melee 38. Also melee 38, that's misleading. They are actually much better in melee, as you may see. So those are our basic kinds of units. You also have artillery, which we don't have any of on the board at the moment, and you have your general. Your general has this little aura which provides boosts to the units inside it. Your general can be killed, but if killed, they're just taken off the board and you get them back for the next battle. They don't permanently die or anything, which is handy. So, I am supposed to advance to take this fort. By these shield icons, you can see that there are places you can garrison troops all around there. Presumably they're garrisoned. So, we're going to select our 2 infantry and move them up. You can right-click and drag when you have multiple units selected to form a front. You can see that line I formed, and they're lined up behind it, so they'll form a front there. We're going to throw our skirmishers out front, and our cavalry, we're going to send our cavalry over here to try to find the enemy. Our general will move up with the infantry. All right, let's go. All right, everybody's moving up. You can see our vision by the fog of war being pushed back here. So, like I said, I do plan to talk a lot about the history during this game. Oh, we got some skirmishers. This battle, as I mentioned before, completely ahistorical as far as I know, so there's just not much to say about it. Alright, so if we go straight in on these guys, Hexamer is actually going to be caught in the river, so I'm going to tell him to get over there into the woods if he can. Siegfried and Kemper, they're walking right now. As you can see, you have this condition bar. It's gone down to 99% instead of 100%. That's how tired they are, basically. Lower condition means you're worse at everything. You can have your troops run, or double quick, and their condition goes down faster. I am going to have them run here, because I want them to get up there and face those skirmishers ASAP. I'm also going to guide these cavalry around through the woods to see if I can flank those skirmishers. And Cromwell is just going to get back because I don't want him shot. It's not worth your life, Cromwell. Run! Run, Cromwell, run! Alright, attack them. Attack them. Attack them. Crocker, get around behind these guys. Okay. So, this is one thing about how combat works in this game. If you're caught in bad cover, it goes very quickly. Notice, Shetland here. He was caught in the river where you have no cover whatsoever. One volley, 66 kills, already routed. They're running and uncontrollable. Just because he pushed too hard. So we're going to shift our target to those skirmishers there. Cromwell can stop running away like a coward. Whereas notice this volley, yeah, they have fewer soldiers, but they only got 7 kills against this guy in the woods. And that's a very close range. Meanwhile, Crocker is going to charge. Here's the charge button. When you charge, you rush into melee. You do a lot better in melee when you charge in, but you're much more vulnerable to fire as you close. So trying to charge formed infantry is a super bad idea. Yep, caught in the river. Okay, that unit card vanished, which means they're gone. They're not even coming back. They have no chance to rally. And you can see our cavalry, they do very, very well in melee. This is actually one ahistorical part of the game. This game does reasonably well at simulating this kind of combat, this kind of line warfare that people engaged in during the American Civil War. One thing they don't do very well, historically speaking, is handle cavalry. American cavalry during the Civil War actually almost never engaged in melee combat. They were almost entirely dragoons. And this kind of thing just didn't happen. This is what you would see from, I don't know, European cuirassiers rather than, you know, American dragoons. Anyway, this is done for game mechanics purposes. It gives cavalry a purpose. They may have made it a little too strong, but, you know, we'll see what happens as the game develops. Alright, Hexamer is going to go over here to see if he can get eyes on that road. As you can see that little icon that pops up. That tells me there's lots of cover there. The little house icon. Over here it's a little tree icon. One tree there, 2 trees there. Different levels of cover. And these fields also give cover because these are high plants. Alright, Kemper and Siegfried are going to advance towards the fort, but not, like, charge in yet because I don't want them shot to death. Crocker, meanwhile, is going to get up here, see what we can see on the road. We've moved pretty fast up. Enemy reinforcements. Who have we got? We've got the 2nd and 3rd Ohio, about 1,300 infantry. Alright, Kemper. Oh, you're still running. I don't need you to run. Actually, I may want you to still run. I think I do, because I want you to get into that house. Alright, we're going to swing over and try to flank these boys before they can reach the fort. Hexamer, I want you to harass the 2nd Ohio. Nope, don't go in the river. Don't go in the river. Alright, you are in range. You may have noticed we get a little wedge-shaped range icon, which is nice. Yep, get some shots off and book it. Oh, didn't book it fast enough, Hexamer. And 9 deaths, 27 kills, I'll take it. So, we're going to get Kemper right there. Hexamer can keep harassing the 2nd Ohio. Actually, what I could probably do with Hexamer is just put him in one of these houses. Alright, so the 3rd Ohio is moving up through the woods. Kemper should start to fire on them once they enter range, as should Siegfried. Tell him to hold as well. And we can turn off the run if they don't need to be running. Alright, so the 3rd Ohio is not taking much damage because they're in the woods. As soon as they come out in the open, they'll start getting wrecked. Up. Okay, so the rest of our reinforcements have come up. We've also got our supply wagon. This is a really important unit. The supply wagon is it's an abstraction of supply trains. So long as you're within the radius of the supply wagon, it will constantly refill ammunition. Ammunition is this bar, this white bar. This red bar shows how far you are along your reloading process, so you can get another volley off. As you can see, it's already gone down on both of these units by a noticeable amount. You do run out of ammunition if you don't have a supply wagon. So we've got the 2nd Division. We're going to bring the 2nd Division up to there. Just, we don't need them right at the moment, but they'll provide support. Hexamer is kind of getting pounded because he's out in the open, but I'm not honestly too worried about it. I'm just going to put him in these houses. Can he shoot? Yes, he can still shoot from there. That's fantastic. Hexamer, stop running away. One thing with skirmishers, they will try to keep running away. Hold and hold. If you give them the hold command, that will stop. Alright, so our infantry is doing really well. We've stopped the reinforcements in their tracks. They're now engaged in a shootout that they really aren't going to win. They've got 2 brigades against my one. They've got 1 brigade against my 2, and both of mine are larger in the first place. So probably 1st Division can just hold these guys while 2nd Division launches an assault on the fort. Or maybe I should finish off the reinforcements first, I'm not sure. But as you can see, Kemper is kicking the snot out of the 3rd Ohio, and Siegfried is not far behind. So normally this game moves pretty quickly, especially when you have a lot of units on the field, and you get a lot of units in the later battles. I've played up to the Peninsula campaign in 1862, and the armies get big. But right now, this situation is one where the game can be pretty slow, where you have infantry units both in cover, just kind of standing, firing at each other. And I like that. Historically speaking, that's very good. That's how fights were. If anything, this is still ahistorically fast. You can see time passing over here. They've only been fighting for 20 minutes, something like that, and already, you know, they've killed hundreds of people. That's not very accurate, but we can forgive that for gameplay purposes. But it's nice that you have this situation, because what it means is lines get formed. You actually have, you know, large-scale unit maneuvering units holding each other in place. As you can see right here, it's not that they couldn't physically advance. They could run past me. They're just afraid to, because that means I would get flanking shots. They'd lose morale very quickly. You lose morale from getting shot at. As you can see here, Kemper's morale is at 97%. We have that nice little arrow there, which lets us know that because General Cromwell is nearby, they're getting buffed. And since they're in good cover, not losing many men, their morale is holding steady. The 3rd Ohio is probably also holding pretty steady right now, but they're going to start going down because they're taking a lot more casualties. We could try to move Hexamer up to flank, but honestly, I kind of like having them where they are. Okay, you can shoot from there? If you can shoot from there, go ahead and shoot from there. I just didn't see you shooting. Come on, Hexamer. You've got to be a little more forward-thinking. Move up. Alright, hold there. Maybe you can shoot from there. Alright, so the 3rd Ohio's pretty beat up. At this point, I think I'm going to go for a charge. Just because I want them out of my hair. Go, Siegfried. Take them out. Now, since I outnumber the 3rd Ohio significantly, this fight should be in my favor. And, of course, I have supporting fire from Kemper. Your units can shoot into melees in this game. There's no friendly fire as far as I can tell, which is nice. Yeah, look at that. So, Siegfried, this also means, interestingly, that when you have artillery, you can just be firing canister shot into melee. And your own troops won't take any damage from it, which is very interesting. So, the 3rd Ohio has broken. Siegfried's charge has sent them running for the hills. We're going to keep chasing them down for a little while, but I don't think we're going to chase them all the way back across the river because we'd run into fire from the 2nd Ohio, which I'm not a big fan of. So instead, we're gonna tell Siegfried to stop and shoot at the 3rd Ohio if he can. Kemper. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we will leave Siegfried here, guarding the fort, as it were, and our other 4 infantry will all advance. Oh, caught him crossing the river. That was bad. 366 kills to 47 deaths. Those Union boys cannot be very happy. So, skirmishers, we don't have much use for skirmishers in a fortress assault. We would have use for infantry, but we want Siegfried holding back the reinforcements. So you can just hold there in the woods. They have no cover. You have lots of cover. So the 3rd Ohio is going to get slaughtered again. Poor guys. You saw that little puff of smoke there. We're taking some artillery fire, so we've lost 1 man. Artillery fire is not particularly deadly at long range. At close range, unfortunately, you get canister shot, and canister shot is absolutely lethal. So we're going to put Kemper up in the fields, Bernie up in the fields. Canfield and Allen, unfortunately, do not have cover. Hopefully Allen can go around, and only Canfield will really get wrecked. And we'll move up our supplies to make sure that our boys stay in good fighting fettle. So it looks like the 3rd Ohio might be trying to flank us. One other interesting mechanic, you can see the assault is starting over here, so I'll pause real quick. One other interesting mechanic in this game. From infantry, you can detach skirmishers. That gives you a smaller unit of basically infantry that move like skirmishers. So they have the same weapon as the original unit, they have the same stats as the original unit, but they move faster like skirmishers do, and they take cover like skirmishers do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Siegfried's skirmishers over here and put them up in these woods. That will let me cover more ground and fend off the 3rd Ohio if they try to cross the river without having to move this unit and risk having the 2nd Ohio try to bum rush me. So over here we've got Kemper, Bernie, Canfield, and Allen all moving in. Looks like Bernie isn't in range. He's taking shots. Alright, I'm just going to have him attack. He's probably going to lose his cover moving up like that, but c'est la vie, c'est la guerre. Yep, there it goes. 24% cover will get your men slaughtered in short order. The 1st Ohio probably has, 100% cover from the walls. So we really don't want to get into a firefight. The 1st Ohio will win a firefight. So Allen, we're going to tell Alan to run. He's going to get across the walls. Terrain doesn't actually stop units, it just slows them down in this game, which is an interesting choice. But so they're going to get over the walls, and we're going to send them straight at the batteries. Once again, you don't want to stand and shoot at batteries because at infantry firing ranges, they will hit you with canister, and canister shot is absolutely lethal, so Alan is just going to charge. Likewise, Canfield here is going to charge, and Kemper is going to charge, because we don't want to be standing here in a firefight with people who are behind walls and have cover. So you see over here the 3rd Ohio was stopped by our skirmishers moving, and they're now getting butchered. And Siegfried is almost out of ammunition. Hexamer, meanwhile, is holding back 3 times his number, or a little more than 3 times his number, and just fine, thank you. Okay, Canfield has broken. Morale's a big thing in this game, and it's very easy to lose morale if you're not careful. Alan, get in there, get in there, get in there. Kemper, help. Take out that battery, please. Charges are on a cooldown. You can see that slowly filling back up. So you can't just charge all the time. Which, on the one hand, is a good mechanical limitation. On the other hand, it's kind of annoying when you get into situations like this, where Alan has successfully taken out one battery and cannot deal with the other one without getting devastated. 160 deaths already because he's charged once and cannot charge again. Bernie can charge. Get in there, Bernie. Alright, Canfield's come back. We'll move him back up. Cromwell. Move our supplies up. Siegfried's almost out of ammo, but that's okay. He's almost out of ammo because he's getting very nice flanking shots on the 2nd Ohio and has scored almost 600 kills. In other words, he's wasted an entire brigade's worth. Alright, we have driven the Union entirely out of the fort. The 1st Ohio is getting shot in the back as they run. Oh, sorry if you could hear that, I just hit my mic stand. And there they go. Where's our cavalry? Let's get Crocker up here. So the 1st Ohio is running, but they haven't completely broken yet. You can still see their little icon. And we want to make sure that they don't get the chance to come back. And we win. So missions are on a time limit. If you successfully accomplish all the objectives before then, it's possible to win before the time limit is over. So you can see over here we've got all these little check marks. We've achieved all our objectives. We've held the fort for a certain length of time, which was a few minutes in game time. And so we accomplished our objective. Alright, so now we have the second part of the scenario. The fort has served our purposes for some time and prevented enemy supply ships to pass this river section, but now the Union is on the offensive. Ironclads approach to bombard us. Okay, so now we've gotten those 2 batteries, so we have those cannons now, which is nice. Federal infantry has disembarked east of the fort and is moving to attack. I'm not sure why they had to disembark east of the fort. I mean, the Potomac River is bridged at several points anyway. We have called for help and more troops will arrive shortly to support the defense. It is advised to deploy some skirmishers at the ridge east of the fort to delay the Yankee advance. I'm not sure that's actually a good idea, because frankly, I kind of want the Union troops, sorry, I'm the Confederates, I kind of want the Union troops to attack me at the fort where I have all this defense from the walls and they have very little cover out here. And then they would also be in range of my artillery. So that might be useful. They wouldn't be in canister range, but artillery in this game can fire 3 types of shot. Round shot, which is the long-range kind that causes very few casualties. Then shell, which is intermediate range and intermediate damage. And then finally canister once the enemy closes, which causes a ton of damage very quickly. You don't get to choose what shot is being fired. They just pick automatically based on how far away the target is. Anyway. We need to buy time for our fort batteries to counterfire and disable the ironclads. General, hold your ground at all costs. We must prove today that the rebellion has a strong foundation and will fight for every inch of southern soil. Once again, you're on the Potomac, guys. This isn't exactly southern soil. I mean, I guess it's technically south of the Mason-Dixon line, but whatever. Okay, so here's an interesting thing to note in this game. Besides these artillery batteries that we got given, we have the same units. This is 1st Division and now 2nd Division. We have these batteries, but we also have Bernie, we've got Siegfried, and we've got Kemper. Some of our units are not here. I believe we have one more brigade of infantry that will come on as reinforcements. But your army stays with you. And casualties you take have to be replaced. You can get new recruits, you can create new units, but the core is always these same troops that you've had the whole time, which is really interesting. So both these batteries are firing on one ironclad. That's great, because I want to get rid of these ironclads. They're basically artillery units, and they'll just be shelling me the whole time. So, they said that I want to send out skirmishers. As I said before, I'm not certain that I do. I think I might want to just hold my walls where I have 87% cover, and they have nothing. Maybe I'll send out skirmishers from Siegfried, just to see where the enemy is. Something else interesting to note here, we don't have a supply wagon, so the supply wagon will presumably be coming on with reinforcements. Which means we do have to make sure that it can get in here safely. So I'm going to put my skirmishers here in this plot of houses where they'll have lots of nice cover. Okay, we've got an enemy skirmisher unit moving in. Battle. What an appropriate name. Okay, you can see we've already got that guy down to 60 out of 100. No, Merritt, keep shooting at him. Don't worry about the skirmishers. The infantry can take care of the skirmishers. Only you can take care of the ironclads. The USS Anacostia and the USS Thomas Freeborn. Thomas Freeborn, also a very appropriate name. Okay, here comes Crocker. So that's handy. Do I get any more infantry? No. Dang. Okay, so Battle is content to sit here because the AI is actually relatively smart in this game. It's specifically smart enough to know that its 185 skirmishers are not going to win a firefight with 751 infantry. So we've got an enemy artillery unit moving up in the rear. We've got some infantry here. These skirmishers, with their 100% cover, will take very few casualties, whereas if Burnham wants to fight them, he'll have to come out in the open where he has very little cover. So this fight, as mismatched as it looks, these skirmishers would actually hold him off for a very long time if he tried to advance out. And I would be perfectly happy with that outcome. So they're going to stay there. We've got 2 enemy artillery coming up. I'm going to hope that I can keep Crocker down here and then sneak him up behind them. Alright, looks like the infantry may be moving in. So we have to hold for 2 hours and 32 minutes, which I believe translates to about, I believe it's about a 6-to-1 ratio, so about 23 minutes, I think. Can't guarantee that, don't quote me on it. Alright, now they feel like they have enough men to deal with these skirmishers, so they're pushing up. Siegfried is going to stand here as reserves and counter any charges. Alright, we've sunk one ironclad. Merritt, yeah, that's fine. You can start shooting at the brook, because it looks like he's coming in for a charge or something. Siegfried's skirmishers are going to do their best. Ooh, supplies. I'm going to take out the enemy supplies so that they'll run out of bullets. I find it's much better when my enemies don't have any bullets to shoot at me. Alright, so the supplies have just surrendered. Their icon changes, gets a little red thingy on it. I don't need them, I'm just going to run them away. You can also see the card popped up down here. Now I'm going to try to kill their general. Last reserve came to help. Okay, I do get some more infantry. Alan, move up. Alright, we've got a charge coming in. So you can see the game gets a lot faster when you have just a few more units. Siegfried is going to countercharge. And Merit can fire. As I said, you can fire straight into melee and it doesn't even matter. So Merit is just going to fire shell right down at those guys. No, you keep shooting there. Now, this is one problem. I can try to control these guys, but they're in melee, and they're probably not. They're like, Siegfried, Siegfried, no. Siegfried, please. Alright, Crocker has been noticed. He's chased General Nicholas quite a ways, but he's been seen, so he's going to move away. Terry has driven our skirmishers out and occupied that area. I'm going to hit the attach skirmishers button to put them back in Siegfried's. Okay, Siegfried, please re-enter the fort. I don't want or need you out there. And we've got Alan coming up to flank the enemy. Alan and Canfield, and some supplies. That's all kinds of nice. Now, I don't actually want them to fight Terry, because Terry is in some pretty solid cover with these houses. But I do want Crocker to charge that artillery if he can, if the infantry is going away. Go for it, Crocker. Take him out. So, that ironclad is almost dead. Cabell is just pounding them. Merritt can shoot Shermer. Kemper's back on the walls with a ton of kills. By routing that unit that charged me, Grant, he scored a lot of kills. So, Siegfried really cracked. Here comes Burnham for another charge. Nope, he changed his mind. And see those numbers go down? That's the effect of canister shot. Alright, we've taken out one enemy artillery unit. Crocker's doing very, very well. I'm going to go after the other one. This is what I mean about cavalry. Cavalry in the American Civil War was never this effective. Just never, ever. Cavalry were scouts, mainly. And skirmishing troops to some extent, but not shot troops. We're going to send Allen around that way and Canfield around that way, see if we can split around and get Terry in a pincher movement. Cromwell just sitting here providing bonuses. That's what he does. We can get him up a little further so we can get Kemper in his area of effect. Kemper is holding on like a champ, and there goes the artillery. Yep, Crocker's doing yeoman work. We can click the route button now, or the withdraw button now, to manually route this unit and to get them off the field. I don't need them, as I said, and I don't want the enemy to get them back. We're going to get these supplies up into the fort. They're going to need it because they have been the one doing all the fighting. Alright, now we're going to hit Terry from two sides. Burnham, you really should have learned. This doesn't end well for you. Terry has decided to charge. You can see that little flash. That little flash means that his morale is low. He doesn't like his chances, which is probably why he's launching this doomed attack. Alright, we're going to countercharge with Siegfried. And when he routes, which he will, he's going to route right into these other two units and get absolutely destroyed. But Alan, turn and take on battle. And there's Canfield, doing what he does best, shooting people. Crocker, no, it's bad actually. Don't have a good opportunity. Alright, Alan, fall back into those houses. Canfield, move up into that field. Siegfried, get pushed back. Excuse me, burp. Alright, we've gotten rid of both of the ironclads. We just have to hold for another hour and a half. Allen and Canfield are good. Terry is running. The Union troops are sort of closed up in this pocket where they don't have anywhere to go. They've got my cavalry behind them, my infantry on their flanks. At this point, we could, if we wanted, advance and try to take them out entirely. There isn't really a good reason to do that. Because, as far as I know, while your army, I'm going to charge Terry since he's still routing and won't be able to shoot at me. Your army is persistent. The enemy army, at least at this point in the game, is not. So, yeah, killing enemy troops, like, holy crap, Crocker, you go. Killing enemy troops is good because it gets you more experience and your troops' stats improve and get better and everything ends up better that way. But it doesn't directly affect the enemy, and losses, I'll show you in the camp screen a little later, possibly in the next video, but losses can have a huge effect on how powerful your units are, so I don't really want to take unnecessary casualties. Like Crocker, this is ideal. 500 kills, 27 deaths. Wonderful. Crocker, you're great. Love you, buddy. Kemper, also doing good. Almost 1,000 kills, less than 200 deaths. Good ratio. These two artillery units, yeah. Notice that Merritt has gotten significantly more kills than Cabell. That's strictly because he was closer to where those charges came in. Alright, we're going to bring Crocker out one more time. See if we can get battle off the map entirely. Cavalry regain their condition very quickly, which is nice. Which means they can launch a lot of charges, they can move very quickly and not get tired, whereas infantry, see, Allen, even though Allen's been standing around for quite a while, he's still only back to 80%. Yep, battle's gone. Alright, we're going to move up our infantry on the flanks here. At this point, this is a cleaning up exercise. We are just going to aim at one unit at a time and route them off the field. One advantage of being in cover is that you actually reload much more quickly when you're on these little shield icons when you're behind the wall. Your reload speed goes way, way up. See, this reload speed compared to Bernie's. I don't think that's a weapon difference. They have this, yep, they have the same weapon, so it's not a weapon difference. So at this point, these guys are totally stuck. They have nowhere to go. The best thing they can probably do is just turn tail and run, but they'd run right into. No, stop. Just hold in position. Don't chase. Stop chasing. Shoot him. If you want to shoot somebody, shoot him. He's running away. Crocker. Close range flanking fire, as you may have noticed, will destroy things. Alright, we're just going to charge in and finish it. Alright, Shermer surrendered, so we captured these infantry over here, the survivors. When units feel there is no hope, they will just straight give up. It's not just non-combat units like supplies, it's infantry and artillery and all that. And we win. I believe we won that time. Our time was not over. I think we won just because the last combat enemy unit surrendered. So, the enemy deployed 6,300 infantry, almost 6,400. We deployed 4,000 infantry, some cavalry, and half as many guns as they had, although they had almost twice as many men and twice as many guns. Casualty-wise, we lost less than 1,000 infantry, 30-some cavalry, and about 20 men off the guns. They lost 4,000 infantry, more than half of their artillery, and they have almost 700 missing, which means captured. Those are the ones we captured. So you can look at unit stats here. Officers, your officers can be killed in battle, which is interesting. And promotion and these level ups here, these are mechanics that are related to the way your army improves over time. This is one really interesting one. Captured goods. You see, you can actually capture weapons off of the enemy, and you can rescue weapons from your own dead if you win the battle. And that is very important because when it comes to raising new units, equipping them is a major part of the cost. So this, although these are terrible guns, but having these guns available makes it a lot cheaper and easier for me to raise new units. This is especially important for the Confederacy. Historically speaking, Confederate military units relied very heavily on equipment that they captured from the Union. There were several occasions during the fighting in Virginia, for example, where Lee's Army of Northern Virginia was practically subsisting off of, they were living off the land and using a ton of captured Union equipment. One example would be the run-up to Second Bull Run, but we'll get to that a lot later. So, this will take us to the camp screen. Oh, we got an achievement. Cool. Okay, so our battle reward, we got $40,000 and 2,400 recruits. Our reputation went up, and we got a career point and a medal. I think I'm going to cut this here, and we'll talk about the camp screen, and then go into the next little set of battles in the next video. So, thank you for watching, everybody. If you liked this, leave a like. If you have something to say, leave a comment. And if you want to see more videos like this, and with more discussion of history and more gameplay and all of that, subscribe to the channel, and I'll bring you more as I go along. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.